What's up, Dargo?
I like Dargo. How can you not like Dargo? Which is why it is so sad that Dargo does not like himself.
If you can be an idiot, I can be an idiot.
Dargo has an internal conflict between two deep felt desires: to be a Luxan warrior and to live the simple life of a non-warrior. This internal conflict has defined his past and haunts his present and future. Time and again in Farscape episodes, Dargo makes choices that express one of his two sides, and he frequently makes bad choices that express his own self-doubt and self-recrimination. Dargo's quest to combine the two aspects of his self is one of the great storylines in Farscape. We meet Dargo about 12 minutes into the first episode. He becomes the first alien to speak to Crichton by threatening him. In the early episodes of Farscape, the original series, Dargo portrays himself as a gruff, unsympathetic, no-nonsense warrior. Other than briefly dropping his facade during an exchange with Zan in Premiere, Dargo spends the first 14 episodes blustering about, threatening to hurt or kill someone, most often Crichton. Deeply scarred by the loss of his wife and son, Dargo endangers his companions by being impatient, quick to anger, quick to judge others, and too eager to fight those he judges negatively, which is nearly everybody. Underneath Dargo the warrior is ironically one of Farscape's most introspective characters. Dargo is gruff and reckless, but also quite thoughtful, though obviously not at the same time. We learn about his past in bits and pieces through the TV episodes, then more fully in the comic book Dargo's Trial. Before he was wrongly imprisoned by the Peacekeepers, Dargo was a Luxan soldier who distinguished himself with honor and courage. In Dargo's Trial, we learn that after Dargo was captured and tortured by the Scorvians, he begins to question his life choices and his future. "There is more to life than being a warrior," he declared, "and I think it is time that I learned what that was, perhaps learned to make things grow. My life has been dedicated to taking life. It might be good to try creating some for a change." He says this to Lolan Tal, a Sebacean who was nursing him back to health and helped him find his gentle non-warrior side. She helps him become a farmer who grows things, and together they create life in Jothi, their son. Their peaceful life was brutally cut short when the peacekeeper Macton Tal, Lolan's brother, murders her and frames Dargo. Spurred by anger and the thirst for revenge, Dargo reverted back to his warrior desires. When our heroes escape the Peacekeepers as Farscape begins, Dargo has a chance at a new life. However, as he says later, at that time he had nothing left but revenge against Macton. This is not entirely true, as he does still have his Luxan warrior heritage, his precious Qualta blade, and the hope to find his missing son. Feeling bereft, Dargo is eager to uphold the traditions of his Luxan people and keeps to the ethos of being a Luxan warrior. But Dargo has a problem. And remember, I like him. I like him a lot. But I like Dargo enough to be honest with him. Dargo is not a very good warrior. And I suspect he knows that. And I suspect that though he wants to be a good warrior when he has to be, in his heart he does not want to have to be one. It is when he stops trying to be a stereotypical warrior and starts being a colleague in friendship that he becomes more effective at both. When Dargo tries to be the big tough warrior in the early episodes, he often gets captured or otherwise makes things worse. He gets captured in Premiere, in IET, and in Till the Blood Runs Clear. He loses his self-composure, jeopardizing his companions in Back and Back and Back to the Future, Thank God It's Friday Again, and They've Got a Secret. He willingly participates in the betrayal of Pilot in DNA Mad Scientist, and is largely ineffectual in Exodus from Genesis, Throne for a Loss, and Rhapsody in Blue. Though his ability to bluster maniacally does save them in PK Tech Girl. Although Dargo never shies away from a fight, and too often sees violence as the solution, he is more than a fighter. He seeks emotional connections with others. Inside, he yearns for what he calls the simple life, having a family and farming fruit to make wine. He had that life once, had it brutally ripped from him, but he still has the desire from a peaceful life. Dargo is prone to anger, apparently a common Luxan trait, but he wants to learn to control his rage and be peaceful. His desire for connection spurs him to cling needily to those he admires. For example, Back and Back to the Future, and Vitas Mortis. Deep down, Dargo is insecure. We learn part of that reason in They've Got a Secret, when we learn about the tragedy of his past and that he was not the murderer he claimed to be in Premiere. That lie about why he was imprisoned expressed his own self-hating guilt over the death of his wife. It is during the events of the 15th to 17th episodes that something shifts within Dargo. Perhaps it is Chiana's arrival in the 15th episode, Durka Returns, but he has no real interaction with her in that episode. Perhaps it is his experiences on the putative Earth in A Human Reaction, but if anything, that should make him less trusting and angrier at Crichton's race, if not at everyone. It is in Through the Looking Glass, the 17th episode, that Dargo's shift in attitude manifests. Like everyone else on Moya, he learns from the need to reunify Moya with her dimensional schism that the inhabitants of Moya also need to unify as a kind of family. Dargo begins to open up more to his companions on Moya, and much less often threatens to kill Crichton. Dargo's attempts to find a peaceful, meaningful life without fighting are repeatedly frustrated. For example, in Thank God It's Friday Again, Sons and Lovers, and What Was Lost. Nevertheless, his inner resilience and desire to find meaning in everything allows him to carry on despite setback and loss. The more Dargo learns to trust the others on Moya and gains confidence in himself, the more he reflects on his own person and his future. He makes the connection between his own self-hatred and guilt and his hostility towards others. He says to Chiana,
I've become so distrustful of people, even when they're trying to help me. What does that say about what I've become?
Dargo does have difficulty trusting others, which, as in most people with such a problem, reflects his own lack of self-trust. He blames himself and does not trust himself to be a good enough warrior to protect those he cares about. His distrust of and anger at Crichton that dominates their relationship for much of the first 2 seasons is largely a projection from how much Crichton reminds Dargo of himself, a man lost, far from home, fighting reluctantly against the peacekeepers when he just wants to be left in peace. Dargo's search for his son Jothi is an obsession of his, understandably so. It is here that his internal battles between 2 desires are strongest. He fulfills his promise to do whatever it takes to find Jothi. Unfortunately, in his urgency, he reverts to old patterns. In Liars, Guns, and Money, Part 1, when Stark offers a plan to purchase Jothi's freedom, Dargo jumps at it, even though robbing a shadow depository is too crazy a plan even for Crichton. He correctly reminds everyone that he never hesitated to do whatever they asked of him, and demands that they help him now. Ever impatient, Dargo takes their hesitation for no, and runs off to make an utterly foolish attempt to infiltrate the shadow depository alone. Dargo again gets himself captured. His friends rescue him, of course, and steal a bunch of money, kind of as planned, but since nothing is easy for them, it all goes to pot. Dargo, as usual, blames Crichton for things going wrong. He is fearful of losing Jothi, understandably, but in his fear and self-doubt, he throws away all the trust he has built up over the previous 2 cycles. As he explained to Chiana,
I was prepared to give Scorpius what he wanted.
What?
On the command was ready to take Crichton by force and deliver him to Scorpius. It was all I could do to stop myself.
Crichton is your friend.
Jyoti is my blood. My child. All I have left of my wife. Now why is that not enough?
Why is what not enough? Why is his son not enough of a reason to betray his friend Crichton? Or why is his friendship with Crichton not enough to prevent the temptation to betray their friendship? We never know, and perhaps Dargo doesn't know either. Dargo's inner conflict, warrior versus peacemaker, still roils inside him. Jyoti is freed thanks to Crichton's selfless act, not Dargo's hasty anger. Father and son are finally reunited. Dargo's mistake after finding his son is to be overprotective, making Jyoti feel like he is not respected by his father. Jyoti having sex with Chiana is perhaps even more indefensible for him than for her, because he has no reason to push Dargo away, as Chiana did. More on that shortly. Dargo refusing to let Jyoti fight alongside the others in Season of Death is not that unreasonable. At that time, Jyoti had no military experience, and things were crazy with both Scorpius and Ascaron on the loose.
Do what I tell you.
Jyoti betrayed his father before either had any chance to re-establish a relationship by having sex with Chiana. Chiana and Dargo began a sexual relationship in Out of Their Minds. It is a doomed relationship, however, because despite the great and frequent sex, they want different things. Dargo wants an exclusive committed relationship and a simple life as a farmer, something the freewheeling and commitment-phobic Chiana cannot contemplate. When she learns that Dargo plans to ask her to marry him, she sabotages their relationship by seducing his recently recovered long-lost son. Aliens have soap operas too, apparently. Dargo and Chiana eventually reconcile, but it takes a long time for him to forgive her. Chiana's act is indefensible, but Dargo shares some blame. He is condescending and controlling to both Chiana and Jyoti. He takes on the persona of the dominant male with them, being the tough warrior with them rather than seeking mutual understanding. For whatever reason, he interacts with them primarily from his warrior persona, not from his loving persona. As early as My Three Crichtons, patriarchal Dargo didn't listen to Chiana and yelled at her simply to do as I say. His domineering overprotectiveness drives her away and makes her feel untrusted, unrespected, and inferior, triggering her insecurities. Despite Dargo's many mistakes, no one can fault his best trait. He is loyal, which, more than anything, is the kind of person he wants to be. His overprotectiveness of Jyoti is out of loyalty. To a lesser extent, so is his condescension toward Chiana, who, quite frankly, needs some guidance. As Crichton tells Chiana and Jyoti after he discovers their betrayal of Dargo,
What the hell were you thinking?
Obviously, we weren't thinking.
Obviously, we didn't think we'd get caught. Do you know what you did? You betrayed the one person on this ship who would have done anything for you. Both of you. He would have died for you.
yes, no question Dargo would have. Dargo always did for others without hesitation. He complained a lot, but he was always loyal. At first, after his escape from Peacekeeper custody, Dargo was hostile toward and suspicious of everyone. His sincere and intense loyalty gradually extends to each of his companions on Moya, even Rigel. He first comes to respect Zan, her kindness and solidity impressing him. He grudgingly comes to respect Aaron, a fellow soldier, even though a peacekeeper. Similarly, as Crichton gradually demonstrates acumen, Dargo comes to respect him. Dargo and Crichton eventually become brothers. They become intensely loyal to each other, but also constantly bickering, so much so that Pilot once bans them from Moya for 10 days. Dargo never develops a close bond with Rigel, but then only Zan does. Still, Dargo does come to respect Rigel for what Rigel has to offer. In the book Dargo's Lament, we see him form a friendship with Jewel, which explains their closeness in the TV episode What Was Lost, Part 1. Despite his despicable act against Pilot and DNA mad scientist, Dargo does offer a sort of apology to Pilot afterwards. He respects Pilot and loves Moya as his home and is as loyal to them as he is to anyone else. Perhaps Dargo's true love in the Farscape series is another ship, Lola. The ship mysteriously falls into his lap in Sons and Lovers. It is no coincidence from a plot perspective that Lola comes into his life in the same episode that Jothi leaves and Chiana becomes estranged from him. Dargo took the opportunity to throw himself into Lola, figuring out what it is and how it works. That Lola turns out to be a Luxan ship allows Dargo to connect with his heritage at a time when he strongly needed to reground himself. Lola allowed Dargo to partially heal and find a way to be a warrior in a positive way, one where he was not blustering and flailing like at the beginning of the series. Lola becomes Dargo's home and ground in a way that Moya never could. Dargo bonded with Lola. It was becoming an extension of him both mentally and physically when it was destroyed by the Scarans, heralding his own apparent death at their hands in the Peacekeeper Wars.
Then I suggest you find out. Before anyone else dies for the love of you.
That was the admonition to Crichton given by the foe Zan in John Quixote. It was, perhaps, a prophecy. Because of Dargo's loyalty to Crichton, he did not get the chance at the peaceful life he craved. Dargo fights out of loyalty to his friends on Arnesk more than for any side in the Peacekeeper Scaran War. It is his love for Crichton that puts him in mortal danger. Our last view of Dargo in the Peacekeeper Wars is Dargo the warrior, shouting the phrase Crichton taught him. It is a fitting, apparent end. Bitterly ironic that the warrior so often captured fights in a desperate attempt to save his friends instead of finding peace. Postscript. By the way, not to spoil it for anyone, but based on the last comic book, I believe that Dargo is still alive.